Welcome to Movie Making. I'm your host, Renelle Golden. Hello, everyone. We are here with Rick Pamplin, writer and director. How are you doing today?
Terrific. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you here with us. I was reading your background and you are just tried and true. You started out in journalism and then you went into filmmaking, I suppose some producing, writing and directing, and you've taught. But what made you make that leap from being a journalist to going into making movies?
Well, that's a great question. You know, it's very hard to get, if you're not born into the movie business. When I used to teach, I used to tell people there's two surefire ways to get into the movie business. One is nepotism and the other is to be born into it. And it's really true. I mean, if you're an outsider, it's very difficult. So I was a kid, from Flint, Michigan. I've been very sick as a child. I've been in the hospital. They weren't sure I was going to make it. I'd had a lot of problems.
Oh,
Things
wow.
I was born with, the surgeries and different things. And so, I spent a lot of time in hospitals and not being able to play sports or go outside and play with kids. And so I watched a lot of movies, a lot of television. And, I gravitated towards that fantasy world. So I had no idea. My father was a postman. My mother was a school teacher. I didn't know anybody. We didn't
Wow.
have we didn't have much money. But so I wrote a review and of a movie. I went to the movies, paid my
Oh,
money, wrote a review, and I mailed it to a newspaper. The newspaper published it
oh,
without
wow.
telling me. So I called them up and I said, "Wow, would you like some more?" And they said, "Oh my God, that was wonderful." Yes. So I went out and I saw every movie I could see, and I sent them like 6 movie reviews.
Oh, wow.
And they started publishing me on like a regular basis. So it was a
Did
weekly
they pay you
newspaper.
or were you like the volunteer?
Another great question. So, sometimes in this business, you work for free to get a
Yes,
paying job.
you do.
So after they published about 6 of my reviews and they seemed to be popular, I called them and I said, "Well, aren't I supposed to get paid for this?" And
Right.
and so they said, "Yeah, the editor would like to meet you." So I went in the offices. They started paying me, and then they offered me the editorship. They had a separate entertainment section, art section that came out.
Right.
You know, so I
Yes.
became the arts editor, and then I reviewed everything and wrote about television and movies and stuff. And one day they said there's a TV station, a CBS affiliate that's opening for Saginaw, Flint, Bay City, Midland, covering these 4 cities.
Okay.
And we'd like you to go do an article. So I went up there, I did an article on them. I got to know them. They offered me a job. I said, "Oh, no, I'm very happy. I sit in movie theaters all day. I write reviews. I'm a published author." And they said, "What are you making?" And I told them. They said, "We'll double it,
Oh, okay.
and
No
and we'll
brainer.
give you a life insurance policy and health insurance and a company car,
Oh,
and
wow.
you'll be working for CBS News." So I reluctantly became a TV newsman for a year and a half,
I
and
love it.
I learned how to edit. Now this is great advice for anybody that wants to get in the movie business.
Okay.
They gave me a 16 millimeter camera, a hand cranked Bolex, and then I
Right.
also had access to a CP16 with a mag stripe that could do sound. So I learned how to do sound. I learned how to do camera. I
Oh,
learned how
wow.
to edit, write, put music on. And every single day, 5 days a week, I had to put these little movies on television on the news.
Oh,
And
wow. Right. Right.
it was the greatest training in the world. And not
High
everybody,
pressure too, right? Because you have like this time constraint. Unbelievable, right?
absolutely. God, you're so
Oh,
perceptive. I love your questions and comments. No, you're
thank
absolutely
you.
right. Because it taught me to do things on a deadline and a budget. And
Yes.
those are two of the great things you must learn as an artist and filmmaker. So I did this for a year and a half, and I did work for CBS News because there were stories they wanted. I worked with Walter Cronkite. I had a story on CBS Morning News, and
Oh,
they paid me
wow.
really well in those days. I mean, it was like a lot of money. And
Yeah.
I loved it, but I decided I really didn't want to be a TV newsman. And they decided that I wasn't because they fired me after about a year and a half. And
Oh,
then
lucky
I went back to
you. Oh
college.
my goodness.
I went back to college and said, I should learn, I should get a degree or something. And
Right,
so
right.
then they made me the editor of the newspaper at the University of Michigan Flint. And the first guy I hired as a writer for me was a guy named Michael Moore. And
No
so
way.
Mike and I were like best buddies for about a year, and we both wanted to make movies. He went out to Hollywood, and he came back and he said, "Oh, you'll hate it. It's all concrete. Forget Hollywood." So then
Oh,
the first summer that I had off after doing a very successful newspaper, we made a lot of money. We won a lot of awards.
oh
I went
wow.
out and I fell in love. And then I resigned my position at University of Michigan as the editor of the newspaper. And I moved out to Hollywood and accidentally moved in next door to Sylvester Stallone six
Oh
months
my
before.
gosh.
Yeah,
That's a
six
great
months before.
story.
Since 6 months before Rocky was released. And the manager
Wow.
came up who had been a stuntman for Errol Flynn. And he said, there's a guy here named Stallone. He wants to meet you. I told him you're a writer. He said he's got to move. So I'm sitting at the pool one day, and Stallone comes up, and he's in these day glow shorts and a yellow T-shirt,
Oh my.
and his hair's parted in the middle, down on his. He goes, "Hey, I got this little low budget fight film. You want to come see it? It's called Rocky." And I went, "Yeah." So I went to see it, Rocky, a rough cut with Stallone.
Oh
And
wow.
he was very instrumental. He helped me get on a movie he did called Fist. I worked
Right.
on a lot of his movies. I was an extra in Rocky too. I did different things with him. I wrote a lot of magazine articles because nobody had ever heard of him. And
That
I
is
lived
so
next door to him.
cool.
So I had access to him. And he was a marvelous guy, colorful. And he was just like, he'd done a little bit of acting,
Right.
but we sort of bonded. He called me his Goomba. Oh, Rick,
What
you're
does
my
that mean,
Goomba.
I wonder?
Yeah, and it was a wonderful time. And I'll tell you a real quick story. My
Okay.
mom, who was a retired school teacher from Michigan, had moved to
Right.
Florida. So she
Okay.
came out to see me in Christmas time. And she
Right.
said, I want to go to the Brown Derby. I want to see a movie star. I said, well, it's not always that easy to like just go see a movie star. I said, but this guy next door, his name is Sylvester Stallone. He made a movie called Rocky. He's going to be a big star. No, I don't want to meet him. I want to meet. So for the rest of my life, until my mother, passed away, she called me up. If I come out, can I meet Stallone now? I said, no, he's kind of become a big deal, and whatever.
It got a
So
little harder.
yeah, she didn't want to meet Sylvester Stallone because she'd never heard of him. And then she spent the rest of her life begging me to. But I got her autographed pictures, and he introduced me to Talia Shire, who I worked for. She was adorable,
Oh,
who
wow.
played Adrian. Yo, Adrian, and
Yeah.
Tally was terrific. And she sent my mother an autograph picture and some things. It was quite nice.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah.
That
So I mean,
is,
I think I've thought about my life a lot during the pandemic and about, all the things. And as you get older, you look back.
oh yeah.
I have been very blessed and I've been very lucky. And one of the things I like to do is encourage other people. Don't be discouraged, find a way in. And it's almost like you have to manufacture luck for yourself. You have
Yes.
to meet people. But people always say to me, what's the key to a successful career in the movie business? And if you take the time from the time I wrote that first review and got paid as a film critic to now, I've been in media and the movies for 50 years.
That's
And
awesome.
I've always made a living. Some years I've made a lot of money. Some years I've been really broke. And
Right,
for a
right,
while, I actually lived in my car in Los Angeles after I graduated because I couldn't get jobs. It was
right.
very, very hard to get people to even read my screenplays, let alone buy them.
Yes.
So,
I'm a screenplay writer, and yes, it is very hard at times. It
yeah.
is, which is why I
So,
became a filmmaker. I'm like, I'll make my own movie and show people what I can do, and then maybe they'll read my script.
that's a great point. And I don't understand it. If I was an actor or a young screenwriter, they always say to me, what would you do? I said, well, I would produce my own film. I don't care if it's on YouTube.
Right.
make something,
Right.
do something, take control. You can't sit around and wait for other people. And I know actors go through this. It's a terrible, but I'm always shocked that more people don't do what Stallone did. And the most recent movie I have that's in release right now, Movie Money Confidential, tries to help people and empower people to say, go out, raise the money, make your own movie. Don't wait for Hollywood or other people to give you approval.
I
And they
need
don't
to
know what they're
watch
doing
that.
anyway. Here's the secret. I lived in Hollywood, from 1976 to 1994. And I worked at Paramount, and I sold scripts to Disney and everybody. I mean, I had a picture made I wrote, Universal made. And,
Wow.
I sold pictures to Warner Brothers. I was involved with Goober Peters for 5 years at Warner Brothers on the lot.
Oh,
And
wow.
nobody knows nothing. The truth is, nobody knows what'll work, or they make blockbuster after blockbuster after blockbuster.
Right. Right.
The truth is, very few movies are successful. Most of them are insanely expensive and over, bloated with ridiculous amounts of money that they spend.
Yeah, that
And
part's scary.
to me, this is the most exciting time ever for filmmakers. You've got YouTube, you've got streaming, you've got things like Tubi, you've got
Yes.
all these opportunities. When I was in the movie business, there were 7 major studios and 3 networks.
Yes. Yeah.
So I had one of 10, I had to get one of those 10 to buy something. It was very, very hard, very
Yeah.
competitive. More people today are making movies, but there's more outlets. There's 7 major streaming sites, each of which have committed billions of dollars for original content in the next 12 months. 7 major
Right.
streaming
Right.
sites. Then there's all the small streaming sites. Then there's these ad-supported Avid channels.
Yes.
I get residuals for some of my older movies from Tubi. And I
Yeah.
think they do a very nice job placing the commercial. I don't like commercials. I don't want my movies interrupted. But
Right.
they don't edit the film. They don't delete anything. And they do a nice job. And I've become a fan of Tubi
Yeah.
because they're a great opportunity for young filmmakers and old filmmakers
For our
to get their
indie
product
films.
out there and get it shown and,
Yeah,
and make revenue. And
that's
I
true.
have a lot of friends. I just did my very first YouTube show. And I did it with these wonderful people that I just adore, Brian and Michelle. They they're kind of goofy. They sold their house in Iowa
Oh,
and they just bought an RV and started traveling the country. They became a nomad. So
oh, that's cool.
they started a YouTube show. It's called Living Our Vision, and they've got about 50,000 subscribers, and they just do whatever they want to do. They
I
go
love it.
anywhere, they do anything, and and I became a fan watching this show. So
Oh,
they came
wow.
and did a show with us on my new movie, which is about Burt Reynolds, and I thought it was going to be like a 15 or 20-minute thing, and we drove around. We filmed for about 8 hours,
Oh,
and
wow.
the show ended up being 48 minutes long, the longest show they've ever done. 21,000 people watched it the first week.
Oh, that's good. Oh,
21,000
wow.
people. And I got emails and people made comments and people want to see my movie. And I love YouTube. I think
Oh,
YouTube is
wow.
great. All of these new opportunities for filmmakers. I
Yeah.
know filmmakers, and you probably do too, that are making ultra low or micro budget movies
Yes. Well, and
and
I've been
making their
there.
money back just from YouTube. Just from
Yeah.
YouTube. I
Yeah.
mean, there was nothing like this when I got it.
It's
I would
so
write a movie
different.
script. I
I
wrote
had
my
a I had a commercial that we made for a Super Bowl challenge, the
right.
Doritos commercials back when they were doing that every year. And I made it and we received well, but we weren't the one picked and blah blah blah. And I got this notice like just a couple of years later that there were 23 million views on our Super Bowl commercial. And I'm like, what? Blew my mind. But it's
It's un,
there. Those opportunities are there. It
it's
involved skunk.
unbelievable. And I find all the new technology is exciting and it's great opportunities. When I went to Hollywood, here's what you used to do. I would spend a year writing a spec script, and then I would knock on doors and pay for copies to be made and delivered it. You'd make 1,000 copies of your script.
Oh, and it's so expensive. The
Oh
old
my
binding
God.
methods and
Oh,
yeah.
it was terrible.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a funny story. I wrote my first script, which eventually got optioned many, many times and got made, and Universal released it.
Oh,
But
wow.
yeah, it was originally called The Photographer, and they released it as Dark Room. And
I love
what
it.
was interesting, one day I was shopping on Hollywood Boulevard in a bookstore, and they had a big thing of movie scripts, and you could buy, movie
Oh,
scripts for like 50 cents. And I went through there, and there were
what?
copies of my scripts, and I bought them for 50 cents because it was cheaper than going to the Xerox store and
Oh
buying a
my
cover.
gosh, that's hysterical. Or
Yeah,
not
I
in a good
bought my
way.
recycled scripts to resend out. So it was a terrible
Wow.
system. It's so much better now. You can do a
Yes.
PDF of a script. You can send it, on the internet. There's so many different places you can do your work. But my advice is make something. Start a
Yes.
YouTube show. Do what you're doing, a podcast. All this stuff is so exciting to me because for so long, and I don't want to get on a political soapbox, but here's a fact.
Okay.
Hollywood was closed to outsiders. Hollywood
Yes.
was by and large closed to women unless they were objectified. It was closed to minorities unless you were cast as an actor, as a villain. I would
Yeah.
go to meetings at studios and they would say no female lead. They have to be the girlfriend, the hooker,
Oh, wow.
the stereotypes. It's so funny to me that Hollywood acts woke because Hollywood was
Is
the
not.
biggest perpetuator of sexism, racism, and stereotypes ever. The first
Yes.
independent film I ever made, the two protagonists were a woman lead and a black police officer. I broke every rule of making a movie, and that movie was hugely successful. It's called
I love
Provoked.
it. What was
And
that?
yeah, it was called Provoked, and it
Mhm.
came out in 19, boy, I don't know, 80, something like that. And
Wow.
so
Okay.
the first movie I made in Florida, and I moved down to Florida in 1994, and I set up shop at Universal Studios. And
Oh, wow.
the the first film I made in Florida was Michael Winslow Live. And I don't believe, as I recall, I don't think there was a white male in the film. It was
Oh, wow.
Michael Winslow from Police Academy, and we had a couple of other characters
I
in the
love
film.
him.
Yeah, and the film, we sold it to Stars. It was hugely successful. I broke every rule of racial and sexual stereotypes that Hollywood had made me live under as an independent filmmaker. And
I
this is
love
another
that.
thing that I want people to understand that are listening. You are living, I know Hollywood's a mess right now, but as an independent filmmaker, this is the greatest time ever. When I was in Hollywood, there were like small little independent films. There were no theaters that would take them. There was no distribution. It was very
Yeah.
hard. I
Yeah.
worked on a John Cassavetes film, and I love John. And he had to mortgage his house every time he made a movie to get the money to make the movie, and then he had to fight tooth and nail to get the pictures out there. And they were wonderful pictures, A woman
Right.
at the
Right.
end. I worked on a picture called Opening Night, and
Wow.
John was an incredible maverick, and he would support his habit of filmmaking by being a commercial actor. He
Right.
would go do movies. But I learned a great deal working for him. That's the other thing I want to tell your audience. Whatever you want to do, go work at it. And by the way, the pay with John Cassavetes, as I recall, I think we worked 18 hours a day, 6 days a week. It was $100 a week. Who
Oh, wow.
cared? Who cared? It's like,
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
care. It was as much food as you could steal off the craft services table. And I love John, and I learned so much. I
Yes.
still, to this day, use things I learned from John Cassavetes, watching
Oh,
him work.
wow. Wow.
And the other thing is what I used to do, and I even did this in Orlando when I was at Universal. If
Right.
somebody was shooting something, I wanted to go see it. When Bob Dylan was at the Hard Rock, I could go in the back because I had a all access Universal badge.
Right.
I would go in the artist interest behind the Hard Rock, and I would go to the sound check.
Oh,
And then
okay.
they'd say like, "Well, who's that guy?" And I go, "I'm with Universal," and hold up my badge. Oh, okay. And
You're fine.
my lawyer had an office next to me, and he's a musician. He loves bluegrass and all that.
Oh,
And we
wow.
would go sneak in, to go, whoever it was,
Right,
Elton
right.
John or Eric Clapton or Bob Dylan, we go watch the sound checks and during the afternoon because they're kind of doing the music. And
Right, right.
it was unbelievable. But I would do the same thing on movie sets. When somebody was at Universal, shooting something, I would go watch and try to like sneak on the set. I got thrown off Sequest one day. Spielberg was doing a series with Roy Scheider called Sequest, and I got thrown off and threatened and
Oh
I was
my
like, "Who are
goodness.
you?" I said, "Well, I'm actually a producer. I have an office over here. Get off our set." Okay, fine. But I did the same thing in LA when I used to work for Warner Brothers. I would wander around, and I used to wear in those days a sport coat,
Right.
khaki pants and
You
tennis
had the
shoes.
look.
I looked like they thought I was an executive at
Zach,
Warner Brothers.
yeah, yeah.
And so anytime an elephant door was open, one day Richard Burton was doing The Exorcist 3, and I loved Richard Burton.
Oh, wow.
So I just walked on the set. I just
Hey, the
stood
door
there
was
like this.
open.
If you do this, by the way, look, have your arms
Have
crossed,
the
and
look, right? Straight
and
face,
and,
arms
and people
crossed.
people would come up to me and go, "What did you think? What did you?" I said, "Well, it needs a little work." I mean, it was crazy. When I worked at Warner Brothers, they were shooting Lethal Weapon 3, and they were going to burn down this subdivision in Lancaster, California.
Oh my God.
And I thought they were saying it was going to be like Gone with the Wind. I said, I got to go see this.
Oh,
So
wow.
I knew they'd never let me on the set. I didn't know anybody, and Lethal Weapon was a very big series at the time.
Right.
So
Huge.
I had this little Warner Brothers, placard on my car to drive on
Yes.
the lot, to go in the gate and stuff. So I drove out, I found the location, and I drove up, and I'm in my little sport coat, and I've got my, ID, and I've got my placard. And I
Right.
said, where's Mel Gibson? Where's Danny Glover? Sir, they're right over here, over this trailer right here.
Oh,
So I
wow.
drove over, I parked in front of it, I walk up the steps. Danny Glover, who's a wonderful guy, opens the door. Says, "Oh, hi, how are you? Mel's in here. Come on in. I got to go do something." "Okay, hey, Danny, nice to see you."
Oh,
I go
wow.
in, Mel's on the phone. This is with the height of Mel Gibson's superstardom. He's
Yes.
on the phone talking to somebody, and he waves me in to sit down next to him on the couch. So he finishes his call. He goes, "Oh, do you want something to drink? Whatever." And then he turns to me and he goes, "Who the hell are you?" I said, I'm a writer. I said, I work at Goober Peters at Warner Brothers. I love Lethal Weapon. I wanted to come watch you guys work. And he said, great. I spent 3 days on the set of Lethal Weapon
Oh,
watching them
wow.
do incredible, burning down this subdivision and all this. We were shooting in the middle of the night. It was freezing in the day.
Wow. And by
And
doing that, you learn, right? You learned from everyone you ever snuck on, I bet.
well, I read an article once that Steven Spielberg did this. When he was a young man, he snuck on the lot, found an empty office, and pretended to be a movie producer at Universal Studios, and he never left. And I always
Oh,
thought,
wow. I love that story.
I admired that so much. And
Yes.
I've met Steven a couple times, very polite, very nice guy. But I knew
Very,
his
very
mother,
cool.
Leah. His mother owned a delicatessen in Los Angeles. And quite by accident, it's called the Milky Way.
Oh,
By
wow.
accident, when I was teaching screenwriting, we would go there in the afternoon, and we wouldn't even know she was Steven's mother. And
Oh,
she started
really?
talking, "What do you
Oh,
guys do?" "Well, we're writers and we're trying to make in the movie business." And one day she's like, "Oh, my son's Steven Spielberg." We're like, "Oh, wow, that's interesting."
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when you live in LA, those opportunities present themselves.
They
But in
do.
Orlando, I met enormous people. In Michigan, I met interesting people. And
Yes.
you have to gravitate towards interesting people to be successful. And you have to be a lifelong student. You must
Yes.
never, I meet people all the time. And like I would go out, I would speak at colleges. I won't mention UCF or any of the college, but I used to go to Orlando. They'd ask me to go speak at Valencia, UCF, and
Right,
I'd
right.
go out there and I'd say, how many people want to be a director? And 90% of the students in the class would raise their hand.
Oh,
I'd
wow.
say, how many of you know lighting? Nobody. How many know
No.
makeup? How many
Yeah.
know wardrobe? How many
Yeah.
know? I said, if you're the director, you have to know every department.
I became a director by accident because my first film, my director didn't show up, and I had a great DP. He was this Emmy winning guy, and he said, I'm like, what do I do now? Everyone's there. We're ready to roll. He said, you're going to do it. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And he's, yes, you are. Calm down. Right. And he taught me. And then from there, I was like taking classes, doing everything I could. And I've done everything but camera on set because I totally believe what you just said. It makes us better, makes us respect the people we're working with as well. Like, but that's just fantastic advice.
Well, it's a great story, and I know people similar stories. Same thing. The guy that was supposed to do the job didn't show up, and they got promoted.
Yep.
And but the point is, and this applies in life. You know, I've
Yes.
learned a few things along the way, and I'm very thankful and I'm very appreciative for everybody that's helped me and every opportunity. And I constantly try to help other people. And you know, if people write me on Twitter or LinkedIn, I try to give them advice
It's important.
or help them.
Mentoring and being mentored. It's so important.
But you must be a lifelong student. You know,
Yes.
I have a new film coming out called Burt Reynolds: The Last Interview. Every piece of equipment that we're using, every bit of technology in making the film did not exist when I got in the movie business. When
Wow.
I got in the movie business, we shot on film. We literally cut, you know, pieces of film and
Yes. Yeah.
moviola, and we cranked it. We did all of this interesting stuff. You know, then we had to synchronize this up. It's so different now. The
Wow.
cameras are small. They're lightweight. They're the lenses. You know, I've had to learn how to use sliders and drones and 4K technology and all this stuff. I'm constantly relearning. The average age of my last crew was 29 years old.
Oh, wow.
And they teach me. I know
Wow.
what I want as a director and as a writer.
Right.
They
Right.
teach me.
I
And
love
I
it.
teach them what I know, which is the old school how to make a movie. They
Yes.
teach me the technology. And
How did I don't want to run out of time, but
okay, go.
and I
Sure.
know I really want to talk about your Burt Reynolds project that's going to be coming out. It is out and has premiered, but how did he feel that way about all the new technology?
You know, I didn't ask Burt that. I pursued Burt my whole life. I always wanted to work with him. I pursued him in California. I went to a movie set of his in Las Vegas. Happened to be the night he punched the director and broke his jaw. Wasn't a good night to meet Burt.
Wow.
I had a birthday when I first moved down here, and we went to a restaurant, and the guy, my exec producer, arranged for Burt to come over and wish me happy birthday. He sat next to us, so I knew Burt, but I could never click with a project. But the great Scott DuPont was able to put us together, and
Oh, wow.
I finally got to make a movie with Burt, and it accidentally turned out, in our case, to be the last movie he did, in The
Right.
Last Interview. And then that movie was Movie Money, and then our new movie is all about Burt and the uncut, uncensored, unedited hour interview that Burt and I did together, which is pretty fascinating.
Oh, wow.
So I was very blessed, and I wanted to preserve his legacy. And people didn't. It was a little bit like Citizen Kane. I was like the reporter going, "Well, tell me about Charles, you know,
Yes,
Foster Kane.
yes.
Tell me about Burton Reynolds. I want to know the real story." So I spent a year researching it, and I found a whole secret life of Burt that the
Oh,
public
wow.
in general, most fans know nothing about. And I
Oh,
interviewed some of his closest people, and then we ended up with Quentin Tarantino, which was just amazing because Burt was working on a film with Quentin when he passed away.
oh,
And
wow.
Quentin graciously gave us an incredible interview. You know, he's a fascinating character, probably the most successful independent writer director of our lifetime. And, you know,
Wow. Yes, I love him. He's one of my favorites.
oh, if you love Quentin, you're going to love this interview in my movie.
Oh,
But anyway,
wow.
all the information, not so I'm hyping too much, but we maintain a site, moviemoney.com.
Gotcha.
Moviemoney.com. You can go see the brand new trailer that we just premiered the film at the Berlin Film Festival.
Which
Our
is awesome. I watched
trailers
it.
on there. All the information on my last two films are on there. You can watch my other film on Tubi or streaming, whatever you want. It's
So
everywhere.
moviemoney.com to check out
Yes.
Burt Reynolds' last interview. and
Yes.
anything else they want to look for you.
Right.
I can't wait to see the whole movie because he's someone I loved, and now I love you, and it's just so exciting. I would love to have you back after the movie has premiered publicly and maybe talk more.
Terrific.
Yes, I'm just I'm so much I'm learning, and I'm not. I feel like I'm not done. But
Good.
I do have this thing that we do. We do what we call 5 for 5. We ask 5 questions for the last few minutes, and we're gonna have to go like hyper speed here
All right. I'm
of our
ready.
interview. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, cool beans. All right. What is your favorite food?
My favorite food is wild caught salmon.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Favorite thing to drink after a long day on set?
Probably a boring answer, an iced tea. I don't drink much.
Everybody's saying water and things like that. They're
Yeah.
healthy. We're filmmakers. We have to rejuvenate, right?
Yes, I'm trying to live a long life, so that's why these answers are
So
what they
you're
are.
not down in the hard stuff, right?
Yeah. I've done the
Um,
bad stuff. I've had enough French fries to last a lifetime.
oh, there you go. Me too, actually. All right. What is one thing you have dreamed of doing, but maybe you haven't done yet?
Um, I don't think change the world.
Okay, okay. Maybe
I'd like to feed starving people. I'd like to stop war. I'd like to make a better world.
I
That's my
love
goal.
that. That's so beautiful. Okay, 2 more. Favorite song to sing at the top of your lungs when you're in the car?
Well, I like Kashmir by Led Zeppelin. It's my favorite song.
Oh my God. Okay, cool, cool. Classic rock. Your favorite movie? Do you have one?
Well, I have a lot, but Citizen Kane really affected me a lot.
Oh, wow.
And
The writing?
it influenced my newest film. I love Orson. I met him. I worked with him a little.
Oh,
I think
wow.
Citizen Kane is just the greatest film ever made.
Well, with that, we're going to have to say goodbye. Thank you for spending some time with us today, Rick. And I look forward to having you back after the release of Burt Reynolds' The Last Interview. Everybody, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
This podcast has been sponsored by Samara Entertainment.